First of all, you want to just tell me what your involvement is with the CLAC?
I'm with the CLAC as I work for the organization of the May Day anti-capitalist protest. I'm also there just to help out, distribute merch and that stuff like that, mobilization.
Mm. And how long have you been involved specifically helping to organize the May Day protests?
I think it's my fourth year this year. Yeah, fourth year.
Hmm. And why did you decide to join up with this movement in such a direct way?
It's a good question. It kind of happened by accident. I guess it's the same kind. It's the same thing for everyone. I mean, you saw these things happen. You think it's important that these things keep happening. You think it's important that the message keeps going out, and you realize that it won't go out without some help, without some people, pushing the wheel. So you decide, well, I'm gonna push the wheel with the other people, and you start doing a little bit of stuff left and right, and you end up with the organization of the whole thing. I'm not alone, of course, and it's kind of a misnomer to call it, the CLAC protest, because it is the anti-capitalist protest. It was not made initially by the CLAC. The CLAC is just there to, help with the publicity and stuff like that. I mean, it's the people's protest. The way the protest goes, the May Day anti-capitalist protest, depends a lot on the people who shows up. And this is something we saw this year. It was very cold, extremely rainy, not really fun to be there, but a lot of people showed up. So we're very, very happy to see these people showed up with, a lot of resilience, because I was downtown with the downtown group, and we were dispersed very, very quickly. And I figured, okay, with the rain and everything, it's over. But no, the people was very angry, and they stay in the street, and they say, no, we want to keep protesting. And some people just moved to the front of the protest and saying, okay, we go this way from now on. And we just sit back and relax and let the thing happen on its own, which I think is the most beautiful thing about May Day protest.
So we'll talk about the different factions that are involved a bit later. First of all, what is the sort of unifying objective of the anti-capitalist movement? So what unifies, let's say, the anarchists and the communists to come together and demonstrate the way they do? What is the guiding principle behind it?
The CLAC works with the principle called the Alliance Mondiale des Peuples, which was written along with the Zapatist movement in Mexico. So basic principles are anti-authoritarian, and rejection of the world system, the current world system, and a support of a diversity of tactics. Pretty much and we still follow the same principle today.
Mm. So we'll get into the tactics and everything soon, but let's talk about May Day specifically first. So tell me from your knowledge how this day became this international holiday. What's the history behind it?
You mean the May Day at large? So that started in the 1880s. Officially, it started with the protests in Chicago, and where anarchists and workers were protesting for the 8 hours workday. But the protests turned very violent. The police shot, I think, one worker. So they did another protest a few days later to protest the deaths that were there, which ended up with a bomb being thrown. Policemen killed, a lot of workers killed, anarchists were summarily tried, and a few of them were executed, and yeah, but that's for the whole world history. In Montreal, the situation is, it started, I think the first May Day protest in Montreal started in 1905, something like that, and it started with an unlikely coalition between Jewish people and French Canadian people. So the Jews were in that weird situation where they had a lot of education from Europe, but they were fleeing the pogroms and the rise of fascism, even in the early 20th century in Europe, and they were fleeing to Canada, where they had this whole education. They had this whole knowledge from their European days, but they were working in very, very poor condition. They were mostly working in textile factories. And so there were some connection made with the French Canadian who were in similar situation then, also with I think Scottish and Irish people, and together the anarchist ideas started to merge into communist ideas too, and they decided to do a May Day protest in the early 20th century, which ironically was repressed by the police, of course, but also by the students, because you have to remember in the early 20th century, the people who could afford to go to a university were the rich people, the sons, not really the daughters, sadly, just the sons of the rich people, and they saw the communists and anarchists as a menace to their hegemony, so they attacked the protest by then. And the repression was, the repression in the last few years was kind of brutal for 21st century standard, but it's nothing compared to what happened in those days.
Mm. So what is the end goal of this movement, like of the anti-capitalist movement? What would you like to see for the world?
More solidarity, I think, certainly. More freedom, of course, but the possibility to act on this freedom. But, there was this comparison, I don't know where I read this. They were taking the old saying from the French saying about liberty, fraternity, equality, and communists are very strong on equality, and libertarians are very strong on liberty. But I think anarchists and anarcho-communists are more strong about fraternity. And this is, I think, what's missing in our current society. The current society trains us to be individuals, and I think we have to relearn how to work together. And not work together to make profit for a boss, but work together just to have fun together.
And I think I know the answer generally, but I'd like to get your opinion anyways. So what's your view on the policing in Montreal and the police system that we have here? What's your view on that?
It's very weird because, we had the case from 2012 to 2015 where the repression was simply brutal. Kettles and mass arrest and gas, tear gas and everything you want, plastic bullet. Since then, they changed the chief of police and repression is the same, but you don't see mass arrests, you don't see the gas all over the city. May Day 2015 was kind of a landmark in the amount of gas that was thrown. I think they break some kind of record for that shit, which was pretty funny because they thrown the gas pellet on the terrace where people were taking a beer because it was a very hot evening, and very stupid anyway. But I can tell the repression is the same because instead of arresting everyone, they just pick a few people out of the crowd, saying, okay, I'm arresting this guy, I'm arresting this girl, I'm arresting this person. The end goal of the states remain the same, to shut down the movement. The means change depending on who's the chief of police or whatever the policy is, but the game remains the same. They want to shut down. They don't want to hear our message. And just to give you an example, for example, on Monday of this week, there was a protest by the Frappru on the housing rights. And we got locked in inside an hospital with journalists from Radio-Canada, the journalist and the cameraman. And they were very sad because they were stuck inside and they tried to get out, but the police didn't let anyone get out, including the journalist. And so we said, okay, at least you'll know exactly what happened. And the journalist was there, we had a general assembly, we discussing with each other, but when we finally got out and checked the coverage of the mass media, including Radio-Canada, it was the same bullshit. They didn't send our message, they only sent the police message, which ended up to be the state's message, which goal is simply to not hear us. So we need outlets like the CLAC, but like other groups, like Submedia, like groups like that, who presents the truth, presents the message, presents what really happens in the field, on the terrain, what really happened with people.
So let's talk about the tactics that you guys would like to employ. So maybe there are different levels of tactics for different levels of situations that are maybe more or less severe. So just run me through the tactics that you guys would use in this movement to achieve your goals and spread your message.
Main tactics is just talking to people. This is what we do the most, I think. We do evening, we did that last week, last year, where we just do a supper, for example, where we bring a few people, talk about their message, their issues, we talk about anti-capitalist issues, and we let the people talk with each other. This is the main thing we do. Besides that, we do also a number of publications. So we try to compile a number of anti-capitalist ideas, make something in French, because French resources are not really that frequent, and then we diffuse, we print out, and we distribute this material. So I guess this is the second thing we do the most. We organize a number of teach-ins with the same goals. So teach-ins is like workshops where people will teach specific issues, for example, how to grow food on your balcony, something like that. We had a great teaching by people from the Southwest who taught us about being secure on the web with your laptop, how to securize your laptop, stuff like that, do-it-yourself stuff, but also history, anarchist history, communist history, anti-capitalist history. So it's mostly what we do. Besides that, we also do the anti-capitalist May Day protest, but we, like I said, we mostly do the publicity in this case, and we try to do an event demonstrating against the large, the biggest capitalist in Quebec, the well-known names like the Desmarais and the PKP and all these big names here in Quebec. And when they try to do something, we try to do a counter-protest, so try to be there to remind them that we're here and we're not giving up our fight. So we've done this, we do this pretty frequently.
So let me just quickly then, on this topic again, address a criticism that people might give, and that's that I've covered two of these. And it was both times that it was the protesters that were throwing projectiles at the police, and then the police, in 2016, they responded with tear gas and the rubber bullets and everything. And this year it was just a little brawl, and then it dispersed. So how do you respond to people that say that it's the protesters who begin the violence?
We are in a system that is incredibly violent against us. We are in a system who thinks murdering 50 people in Lac Mégantic is worth it to give a few penny more to the shareholder. We're in a system who think it's fair to cut social security to $400 a month, which is not enough to pay rent in Montreal, less to pay eating and food. We're a system who thinks it's better to tear gas, hold people and children in order to ensure that buildings remain empty. So we're in an incredibly violent system, and I cannot be against people who decide to throw rocks against the system. That is, we support the diversity of tactics, but we do not think that the end does not justify the means. It's more the opposite way, that is, the means defines the end. So we certainly support breaking bank windows. There's just too many of those, and it's not like they cannot afford it. But personally, I'm not a fan of attacking people. So I don't like the police. I think the police are really a tool of the state. But I try to remember that they're a human being first and policeman second, policewoman second. So I'm not really a fan of attacking directly police, but I'm certainly not against breaking down some windows.
I mean, I'm sure that in general the issues tend to have a similar, idea behind them, but I'm sure they evolve over time. Or you could tell me otherwise if not. So what are the issues that bring this movement into the 21st century as opposed to in the early 1900s?
It's very diverse, I would say. There's a lot of people coming in with their own, their own issues. The strong ones nowadays, I would say, there's a workers component which is very strong. Right now we see a great rise in the precarity of workers' conditions with temp workers, contract workers, and the like. So we have a large part coming from that. There's also a large part coming from environmental issues. So they see, for example, things like the tar sands and the oil sands destroying the earth. So they think that capitalism is destroying the earth and they're trying to fight it, something I agree with. There's also a large feminist movement. So women essentially fighting patriarchy, which is still a very strong element, especially in Montreal. We see it with the Grand Prix and a similar event where women are really materialized. Same thing with the queer movement. There's a strong queer movement with queer issues here in Montreal. Besides that, the students movement are still very strong. Still about tuition hikes and the condition of student in their course, and the fact that many students have to work to make ends meet, sometimes have to work during their course, so they have to pay the university to have the right to work in order to finish their courses, something that creates a lot of issues. And we have a large component also coming from the current austerity measures of the government. So people affected, people on social security, people on unemployment, and people suffering from cut services from community groups.
So let's just talk very briefly about capitalism generally. So what do you think is the most fundamental problem that you guys are trying to address about capitalism that you want to change, that you think is maybe hurting people? What is the most fundamental problem with capitalism in a short, concise way?
It depends where you come from, but in short, concise way, I think capitalism put a small number of people in power, and these people are trying to maintain this power at any cost possible. And what we see now is that we cannot afford this cost. The earth is getting destroyed. How long can we continue with these systems? And it is not sustainable. So we see ourselves, society, heading to catastrophe, and we think it's an emergency to act and to oppose this small number of people, very small number of people, who want to stay in power. I think the last time they did the research, they were down to 63 people owning half the wealth of the earth, and they just want more. At some point, you have to ask a question, why?
And why do you think?
People in power want more power. I have no idea. I don't know what I would do with $1 million. Imagine have it $1 billion or $1 trillion. I really don't know.
Yeah, so now let's just talk briefly about like the different factions that are actually involved. So first, the CLAC might be the primary organizer, but are there any other organizations that come in and contribute to this May Day?
Well, technically, the CLAC, the CLAC, doesn't really exist by itself. I mean, it's a convergence of different groups. So we just come together to do a few things, but we don't really we don't impose ourselves on the community. I mean, it's my case, I'm implicated in different groups, and everybody in the CLAC is implicated in different groups and different organizations, have different agendas in some case. So we only come together to do a few things, including the May Day protest, where, like I said, we just, we do the publicity, we do a preparation, and we present a number of resources, but in the end, we put it in the hand of the people who showed up. And the people who showed up decide, okay, we're going this way with that thing. And this is what we do every year. I mean, we ask everybody to come out with their own action, with their own contingents, with their own ideas. We don't want to impose ourselves in this whole anti-capitalist struggle. I mean, we present ideas, we diffuse ideas, we do a lot of publicity and communication, but we don't want to take the whole place, because we don't present solution. and it's all of our groups, our member groups, who present their solution, saying, okay, this solution should be this, solution should be that. And we just present, okay, this is something we don't want. If you want to do go to our solution, like, go to these people.
Mm. So on this topic, I'd like to present you with a criticism and get you to respond to it. So it seems to me that there are a few main groups, and there's the anarchists, there's anarcho-communists, and there are communists that just plain communists.
Yes.
So I wonder how you reconcile the sort of, because there are some people who are pro-Soviet Union and pro-Stalin and stuff that come to these things. So I wonder how you reconcile the anarchism with that strain of communism. It's not all the same, but with that strain of it.
People who come to the CLAC must respect the principle of the AMP, the Alliance Mondiale des Peuples. And we have expelled some groups where there are some groups in Montreal who are pro-Stalinist. You're correct. There are very few, as you might guess. We even found one group who was in favor of North Korea, diffusing propaganda about North Korea, and we're just, you really think now North Korea is the workers' paradise? Mm. So yeah, no, they're not coming. I mean, they can come to the protests if they want to, but if they start diffusing their stuff, no way. And they're not participating in the organization either. The only communist group who participate in the organization are those who respect the AMP principle, which means non-authoritarianism, which some groups respect. When I'm talking to them, they speak themselves of communists, but I think they're more like anarcho-communists in some cases. But yeah, we've had some issues with group in the past, yes. Mm.
Yeah, I get that vibe too. That if it is the further left version of it, most of them have the anarcho part.
Somewhere,
yeah. So, in terms of this movement worldwide, how active do you think it is worldwide, and how active is it in Canada versus Montreal, then the anti-capitalist movement in general?
I think we have a problem right now because we're very fragmented, and we need to make more links. And we have this issue with Montreal where, you know what they call in Canada the two solitudes. And we see it in Montreal in that we have a lot of anarchist and communist groups, but we have French ones and English ones, and the communication between the two is not perfect. I mean, we get along fine because we have the same messages, but we don't work together as much as we should. So even in Montreal, we see ourselves as fragmented. We've tried to do something this year. You can see it there. We just created a new calendar to put everything together, all the events from every group together on the same page. Hopefully, this will, prevent that we do 4 punk shows on the same night. But yeah, we have a lot of work to do in Montreal itself. So yeah, on the worldwide stage, I think it's the same issue. We work a lot on our side, alone in Montreal, alone in Toronto, alone in Vancouver, but we have to make more links between each of the cities, between each of our groups.
Mm. Your own personal, what motivated you personally to get involved in this? If you've had any sort of explicitly negative experiences with the system and with capitalism you'd like to share?
I'm part of the 2012 generation of militants, so I was not very active before that day, and in 2012 I started to be involved in protest, and I realized, we didn't have a lot of revendication. It was very simple what we wanted, and we realized the system just did not want to listen to us, and we realized that they did not care about us, and they just cared about maintaining the statu quo, about maintaining themselves in power. And that was kind of an eye-opening in my case, realizing that, no, this is not, I don't want to live in that. I don't want to live in this system anymore. I think we deserve better. Beside that, I had some health issues in the past, and the system failed me, and like it does with most people who have severe health issues. And I realized that the system supports itself but does not support the people that much. And we have a few social services, but they're really spread thin, they're cut to the breaking point, and I saw too many people broken or on the verge of being broken by a system which just steamroll over everything just to make a few more pennies for a few billionaires. So no, I cannot accept this. I think we deserve a better system. I think we deserve a better way of life. I think we live in an abundant society. So why can't we share the wealth?
And what would be the sort of system that you would, want to see in place if you could? If it was the perfect world and you had the power to do it, what system would you like to see?
I'm more of an anarchist in my case, but it's mostly I want people to work with a lot more solidarity, fraternity, like I said earlier. People working a lot more together. I really like the co-op model and the horizontal organization model. So a lot of our comrades are more revolutionary types. I'm more of a critical mass type. So I'm thinking that we need to take as much place as possible to take over the whole page, and replace these corrupt organizations, these corrupt companies with self-managed cooperative and self-managed industry, and take over the whole place. But of course, for now, they're letting us do our self-managed cooperative because we are no threat to the big capitalist system. But if we get bigger, I know they will come to repress us. And we have already seen that in some cases. A lot of our friends tried to start cooperative for agricultural cooperative, and they met with a lot of resistance from the states, who realized that these cooperatives are a lot more efficient, I would say, than the whole system, and they could threaten the way agriculture works in the state nowadays. So it's difficult. So we think we can take a lot. I think we can take a lot more place with self-managed workplace nowadays. But in the long term, yeah, we'll have to be prepared to face repression.
All right. I guess, is there sort of a by any means necessary attitude among your comrades?
In the CLAC, not that much. In the sense that yes, we were prepared to go very far, but not by any means necessary. No, and it's pretty well defined in the CLAC, and even in the principle. Because if you decide to go forward by any means necessary, that means you're doing things without consulting the people, without being in agreement with the people. So it becomes a totalitarianism in some way. So you cannot go by any means necessary. You have to have a support of the people, and to have a support by the people, you have to convince them, and you cannot go by any means necessary. You have to go by the means that the people want to go.
Interesting. Okay, that's pretty much it. Is there anything else that you would like to add, you think is important that we've missed, or any comments you'd like to make before we end?
Well, we've been very serious, but I think the end result is, and what keeps me going, it keeps me working in these groups is I have a lot of fun. I mean, the systems really breaks people, and you just say, okay, no, fuck it, I want to do things different, I want to live my own life, I want to live my life the way I want, and it's a lot of fun. And yeah, come join us and see how much fun we can have.
Oh, I've definitely joined, and it is really fun. All right. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
No problem.
It's very interesting.